Hello everybody, Adrian Plass here,
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
and this is number 210 in Sounding the Shallows.
Which is utterly ridiculous, but really nice to know that just some people are still with us as we...
Well, last week we talked about our journey, didn't we, and how we visited lots of places we've been to. And I've been thinking about that ever since, but I don't think we're alone in that
No,
idea.
I think one or two people enjoyed, even just in their imaginations, thinking of the different places where they'd lived as a child, as a young adult, maybe, with work, with family, whatever. And there is one couple who we know quite well who said they're actually planning to retrace where they both came from, because one was born in Romania and one in Germany, and so they're actually going to go and look at it and just be there.
I'll be very interested to hear what they make of that, whether it's positive or negative. I must say, our journey, I found some of it brought up too many memories because of hitting so many spots from the past, but I'm sure they'll have a great time.
And some things did make us laugh again and think
right.
again and almost feel some of the best moments as well as maybe some of the others. I mean, I think going on holiday near where we lived and brought up our children, I thought of Bonfire Night, which was one of the highlights
was one of
our
my
year.
absolute favourites, Bonfire Night.
Well, it was until they built lots of new houses just behind our garden.
And until I nearly killed one of Kate's friends.
No, that was much later.
Well, yeah, I know, but I still
yeah, but
came close to injuring one of her
you did.
young friends.
Okay, you did. But
Twice.
that took me back to my childhood, where at Bonfire Night you wonder whether the Roman candle will ever actually light, and you especially wonder about the Catherine wheel, which always got stuck on the tree. And all these things are kind of part of when you do a little journey.
I think there was a sort of belief in the mythology of fireworks. I think something in me always, the child in me thought that if we just light them, something magnificent could happen. And it didn't really much.
No, even more so. I don't know if anybody ever experienced indoor fireworks, Adrian. But I mean, indoor fireworks were the most amazing things, where you had them on the table, and if you were very lucky, something that was supposed to be a snake crawled out to the middle of it. Nothing much happened with anything else, really.
I remember our engagement party, we had indoor fireworks, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Very wild party.
Well,
there were three of us at it.
Yes, and for the person who didn't know we just got engaged, we spelt out with lemon juice on paper that we got engaged. Yeah, this is getting very silly.
Anyway, what I was thinking, I wanted to ask you about something, because you'll see the connection to this in a minute. You know, we watch a lot of these food programs where people competitions to produce food, like I don't know, what are they called? The Great British Menu, things like that.
Yeah.
One of the things that fascinates me about that is that when chefs and people who love cooking place pieces of food into a pan, they put them down in a particular way. They place them very carefully with their fingers downwards and just press them a little onto the pan. And there's a look of such concentration and not exactly joy, but involvement in what's going on. Well, we have a lovely garden here. We're very fortunate with our house, and it goes around three sides of the house. We never expected to have that, but we have. And you've always loved our gardens. And I've noticed that when you're working in the garden, which you often are, you're very similar to that. You're very taken with little bits of the garden that are very special to you. And I know you didn't know I was going to ask you this.
No, I really did not.
I just wanted to ask you to tell us why and how that feels so special, because it's one of your favourite things in the world, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think when I was a little girl, and my father was a gardener, and I used to watch with awe as he created things in the garden that I was not allowed to really be part of. And I saw him with that same dedication to one small patch of earth, or one rose bush, or one. So maybe it came from there. I remember as a little girl, I couldn't bear it. We had woods behind where we lived, nothing to do with us really, but people would run through them. That was what you did. But it also meant it trampled down bluebells and trampled down little beech saplings. And even as a little girl, I couldn't bear it. And I really cannot bear it when things get tangled up with weeds and sort of smothered and strangled. And so I suppose that comes into it, really, sort of freeing them. And yes, I probably do talk to them a bit and say, there you are, you're free now, you haven't got this horrible sticky weed strangling you.
And of course,
is that what you thought?
No, I know that you think about it all the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time, and you really relish the changes that will happen. You love the fact that you've done something that will produce something later on, and tidying up little patches of the ground.
Yes, and I don't love the fact that everything, and you know, one of the things about a garden, which everyone will know if they love their garden at all, is that it does reduce the size of the enemy. You know, we're in a world at the moment where there's a feeling that that thing in John saying the devil is in charge of the world does feel frighteningly relevant. But when you're in the garden, the slug becomes your enemy. And so does the weed. You know, they are the things that you really feel strongly about when you're in the garden, and you kind of forget some of the other things for a little while.
The slug and the weed.
Yeah, that's, well...
I thought you'd say you're distracted by the beauty of the plants.
Well, you know, I wish I could be more, and I think that's one of the problems with continually seeing things that you haven't done, really. It's very hard. I mean, I think...
It's quite a big garden, isn't it, this one?
Well, it is a bit. But I mean, I think... Yeah, I think there's always something to do, and that can mean that you don't see the whole picture. And you would say yourself, gardening is not your thing, really, but you will go out and you will really enjoy some beauty in a way that I'll be sitting there thinking, God, that needs cutting, or that needs...
You weed and pull things out along the roadside, don't you?
I used to. No, come on.
I once joked that you spent some time weeding the central reservations of motorways, but that wasn't true. But
no.
I often see you picking at a plant in a hedgerow or in a public garden.
Can we move away from this? I'm beginning to sound like a total idiot.
No, you're like everybody who loves funk, I'm sure. Two other things occurred to me. One was that your mother, when she had less than a year to live, and I remember her saying with more passion than I can remember her saying many things at that time, her saying, I would like to be here for one more springtime.
Yeah.
And I know for her that season when things grow and become new and things are fresh and they live was something she would have loved to have made her way to at that time. So I thought of that, and I also thought of my own childhood, because my childhood was pretty
complicated,
yeah, pretty messy really. But I also remembered my parents, who had a lot of problems really between them one way and another. They would suddenly become very interested in the way that I described you being with the flowers and stuff. I can see an actual red plant that they had, red blooms, and them talking about it and looking at it in a way that was really comforting, because they were jointly caring about something. And of course we go and have coffee and lunch in a number of farm shops, don't we? And as you go around those
we do like farm shops.
You meet a lot of people, often couples, some
garden
older,
centres,
some younger, and they've got their trolley, and they are looking at the things that they've collected and that they're going to pay for and take home. And in their heads, you can tell that they're thinking, we're going to put that there, and we're going to put this here,
Yeah.
and then we're going to take something out, we're going to exchange it for this. There's that same fascination. So I want to know, what is your favourite thing in our garden? What? I mean, my favourite thing, I have to confess,
Come on
is
then.
sitting on the bench. I love it. I love that end of the garden. I love sitting there.
Okay. Oh gosh, I don't know really. I do love roses. I think perhaps because my father loved roses, and so I love the fact that you take your secateurs and you cut off the dead head of a rose, and there's another little bud all ready to come out. And I think that intricate care is something that it's very parental, really. You know, we talk about God caring for his world, and I think it is that very parental care. And I think that's why we know in our hearts that God must be so sad that we haven't looked after his world. We haven't understood the need. I'm sorry if this sounds a bit really, but we haven't understood the need to look after in detail, take each little part of the world and think, what are we doing? What are we doing to the rainforest? What are we doing? What are we doing to the climate? What are we... And I don't know how you do that, because it's such a vast scale, and certainly not going to alter it by picking dead flowers out of a flower bush, or putting down coffee grounds to prevent slugs coming.
One of the differences between you and I, there aren't that many, but one of them is that I know you see God through nature quite strongly, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, in the creation, in the beautiful things, and the...
It reassures me, Adrian. It does. And I know many other people for whom that's the case. And I know sometimes that's been thought to be some sort of pantheism, or, but there's something about the minuteness of care of creation. The tiniest animals, and we saw a sparrow yesterday on our bird table, and she's got quite a big baby there. Looked almost as big as her, but she was meticulously picking up seeds from the seed tray and popping one after another little seed into this baby's mouth. And it was so precise.
The thing that struck me about that was sparrows are so ravaging. I mean, they come and eat everything, don't they, with enormous energy.
Well, I think all the birds do,
they do. But here was a mother taking food that she would normally have gobbled down to just pop into this tiny beak of this little sparrow that was sitting there.
And I know, yet again, we marvelled at how the heck do birds know how to build a nest. I mean, we have some magpies in our garden. I don't think they've had very good lessons. Their nest looks a total wreck.
Well, I think their nests aren't neat like some of them.
But some of them are amazing.
They're very busy, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they're always... I think one of them's usually up there, and the other one's collecting things. And they're very busy, and they also get rid of other birds or chase them off.
And I think they are aspects of God, in the sense that you see that extraordinary care in creation. That's why I think I always feel more comfortable with God when I can see what he's created, and desperately sad for him at the things that get ruined. And I think that's why when I'm dealing with my little tiny bit, I feel, well, he and I are in it together. I'm untangling. Come on, I'm taking the weeds out from round a plant.
I remember a friend of ours who was very confused about God and found it very difficult to imagine him being really interested in her. And in fact, I remember her saying to me once, because I'm rubbish really, I think that was the expression that she used. And so when she was sitting in the chapel where we used to work, instead of looking at the speaker or looking at the screens, she would look up to her right through one of the windows.
Well, anybody who's been to Scargill knows that it's the most beautiful chapel with windows that look out onto the hillside, onto the valley.
And I asked her eventually, why do you never concentrate on the service? Why do you look up there? And she said, similar to what you said, really. She said, I feel comfortable about God being the one who made these lovely things, and it's my way of connecting with him.
I know.
Find the other ways really difficult.
And I know that there will be one person listening to think, oh yeah, but that's the mountaintop. You've got to come down from. And actually, that's what makes it possible, I think, to care for the person who you meet, because somehow you've been reassured about the intricate care of creation. Does that make sense? I mean, it just makes you feel, well, if he can be that special in making this sparrow so special that it's going to look after its baby and feed it bit by bit, then I can look at other people and think, well, maybe they're very, very special to God.
Well, Jesus says, doesn't he, not a single sparrow falls to the ground without my Father being aware of it.
Yeah, that must be very hard work.
Well, I was going to say, I've just started this very silly poem, which works out how many cockatoos we're worth. Because it says that we're worth more than many sparrows, and how many kangaroos. Anyway, I do waste my time in interesting ways. But the other thing I thought,
I think I'm going to find some weeds that you might need to pull out, Adrian.
I'm sure it's thrilling. Yeah. The other thing that I thought about, which I've often thought about, is Jesus returning from the dead to the garden where Mary is.
Yeah.
And I've no idea what the weather was that day. I've no idea what season it was. But I've always imagined, I suppose because it makes me happy, the thought that it was late spring when the flowers had come out in the garden and the sky was smiling at him and there was someone who loved him and who he loved looking at him with profound shock and enormous pleasure at seeing this person who she thought had gone forever, and him, who knows, but perhaps looking around and thinking, it's worked.
I'm back.
I'm here. I'm back in a garden, and there's somebody who cares about me, and there are lots of others who will be very pleased to see me.
And you know that we are told again and again and again that Jesus, while he was living, withdrew from the crowds and went somewhere quiet. And we've only been to Israel and Palestine the once, but we realised, didn't we, the massive swathes of countryside that there are, and round what would have been tiny little settlements, tiny villages, seething with people and animals and work and busyness, and of course for Jesus an increasing number of people wanting to hear him, wanting to get close to him, wanting to put him on a pedestal. And again he just takes himself off into the nature that he and God and the Holy Spirit created.
I do love the idea that he loved the creative world as much as you do. You know,
I think he might have loved it a little more.
Well, who knows? But
he
it's
did it.
made in God's image, so maybe you're more made in his image than I am. I think I've got.
Now, come on.
I have a bit of a journey to go with the.
No, I tell you need to get into some weeding. I'll and then maybe you'll catch some of the wonder of disentangling a plant.
I enjoy the results of your work. And I particularly enjoyed taking the dog out and sitting on the bench.
Actually.
And she climbs up on my knee and she sits completely still.
Yeah.
And she sniffs the air and she looks around and she occasionally moves her head if a butterfly goes past or something happens. And it's not too far from the pond where, as we've just discovered at this time of year, tadpoles appear.
But then I remember, Adrian, with the dog that we had before this, you wrote a whole book by walking her every day through some beautiful countryside along a disused railway track. So,
yeah, that's right. Every day as we walked, I had at least one idea, and I would come back from the walk, and somehow seeing because it was a nice leafy walk as you went through.
Beautiful.
Seeing that and thinking was a very pleasant combination of experiences. But I don't think I specified it in my head particularly.
No, and I don't think I did. But I think we don't have to, do we?
No.
I mean, I think that's the problem, isn't it? When you start going for a walk and thinking, right, where am I going to meet God? Where am I going to have an experience? Where am I going to feel blessed? Where am I? I think that's hopeless, actually. It never seems to happen, really. But
I remember another friend of ours who used to love walking in the morning said one day, well, we asked her about heaven, and she said, well, leaving aside God,
leaving God out of the picture,
because she was so thrilled with nature that she was almost wanting to make sure it stayed fenced off.
Because she didn't, the God she knew, she wouldn't have wanted to have in the garden.
Maybe.
And I think that's the point, really. And I think it's just understanding a little more of the heart of God, really, which she did without analysing it by being in it. It's not easy for some people. We know people who can't be in it, and also if you're in the middle, I mean, we live in an area that isn't that beautiful, and we know a lot of people who do live in very difficult circumstances and not easy. Maybe haven't got a garden or a this, that and the other, so I don't know. But I think you can find something. You know, your mum, as I've said many times, used to find deep pleasure in the tiniest things. So we would go with our very small amount of money to buy one primula to put in our gardens, and we would take ages choosing the one. And I used to watch her. You said about the chefs, and I used to watch her looking and thinking, well, that one's got so many buds. This one, I like the colour of this one. Which do I have? The one with, and taking ages choosing something tiny.
It's a nice thought.
Isn't it?
And our grandson, who's 3, he enjoys the garden.
Oh, yes. He really does. Absolutely. He enjoys everything about it. He does. And so do most small children, actually. Oh,
well, thank you for answering my questions.
Well, yes.
And maybe people have their own view.
Oh, we would love to hear from you, as always.
Thank you.
Bye. Talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.